Okay. All right. How can you laugh through what you all live through? Peter Rosenberger often hears that question when people learn of his 33-year journey as a caregiver for his wife, Gracie, who lives with severe disabilities, including 80 plus operations and amputation of both legs. Yet both Peter and Gracie draw hope from their deep faith, which strengthens their heart and their sense of humor. Peter's weekly radio show, Hope for the Caregiver, is heard on more than 185 stations. Through his show, along with his books and speaking events, Peter addresses the challenges of life, business, and relationships with candor, compassion, and comedy. Drawing upon his martial arts studies, Peter has a second-degree black belt in Hapkido. Peter equips audiences to practice self-defense of the heart. Peter has authored 3 books, including Hope for the Caregiver, and his newest book, 7 Caregiver Landmines and How You Can Avoid Them. Peter and Gracie are both accomplished musicians and have released 2 CDs. The couple also heads prosthetic limb outreach to Gracie's fellow amputees in Ghana, West Africa. Standing with Hope trains and equips local workers in Ghana to build and maintain prosthetic limbs for their own people. Working with inmates at a Tennessee prison, Standing with Hope also recycles parts from donated used prosthetic limbs. So without further ado, I want to welcome Peter.
Well, thank you very much, Jennifer. Can you all hear me? Just nod. Okay. I think this thing is being transcribed. I speak fluent Southern, and I just want to make sure everybody can understand me. I will drop the occasional y'all, all y'all, and mama and them. That's mom and them, for those of you who don't understand Southern. And I also speak fluent caregiver. I've learned this over a lifetime. My journey has increased. I should have given you an updated bio on that, Jennifer. Sorry about that. I told Jennifer, just introduce me as Peter. But next week we fly down to Denver. I live in Montana now. We lived in Nashville for many, many years. I grew up in the South. I'm originally from South Carolina. And I met Gracie at school. She had already had a wreck when I met her, but still had her legs. She'd had about 20 surgeries when I met her, but doing great. She's just beautiful, beautiful young woman. And don't take my word for it. Google her. I was Googling her that day. We didn't have Google back then. And I just fell in love with this young lady, but the surgeries kept mounting. I had no idea what it was like to be in a relationship with somebody who lived with the kind of damage she's lived with. Her legs were amputated, both of them in the 90s. And next week, when we head down to Denver, this will be that I can count her 84th operation that I can count. She has at least 2 more after that in the next calendar year. Orthopedically, as they said down at the University of Colorado Medical Center, she's one of the most challenging orthopedic cases that they'll see. And so it's been quite a journey. It never ends. It's relentless. We were at the local community hospital here yesterday, and we will be there again on Friday. And it's just part of our life. How do you function in that? How do you keep a sense of humor? How do you keep sane? And I do have documentation that I am sane. I have been tested. Y'all could laugh at that. That's funny. I don't care who you are. That's just funny. I see, look at y'all. Y'all look like you just hung over. Would y'all stay up and watch the results last night or something? I mean, just relax. We don't have to be, I've got a lot of names here and a few pictures. So feel free to put your picture on there so I'd look at you and see you. And also, if you do have questions or comments, just send it to Jennifer. She'll help me try to monitor this. Jennifer, I see some of them popping up, but I can't monitor it at the same time, but I'll just trust you to do it. And just interrupt me in the middle of it. We're caregivers. Here's the deal. There's a lot of poetic stuff about caregivers. I've been a caregiver. I'm now in my 30. Wow. I asked Gracie to marry me 37 years ago this month. That's how long I've been doing this. All the poetic part and the lovey-dovey and the Hallmark card, that stuff is great. It kind of wears off after a couple of decades, and you just have to kind of live life. And I don't stand on ceremony. We have a good time. We live life large in spite of all these things. Gracie has a great sense of humor. She laughs like a drunk Viking, and I love to make her laugh. I figure that's, that's a gift that I can give her. I did a video some years ago with Jeff Foxworthy on You Might Be a Caregiver If. And some people were like offended. They were like, oh my gosh, he's making fun of this. This is my life. This has been my life since Reagan was president. So I'm going to laugh and I'm going to have a good time. And I'll give you a couple of them. You want a couple? I'll give you a couple. If you have a carpet cleaner on retainer, you're probably a caregiver. If you get more than 6 Christmas cards from doctors, you're most likely a caregiver. All right, now y'all don't tell anybody I'm going to say this one. If a hospital bed has never hampered your love life, you're probably a caregiver. So we have a good time. We live life. We cry enough tears. Do we laugh enough laughs? How about you? I listened to that video. One of the biggest things in there that comes out of this is isolation. Caregivers suffer from what I call the 3 I's. We lose our independence, we lose our identity, and we become isolated. And I say this often, that caregivers can feel isolated in a crowded room. How many of you understand that? Raise your hand. Those of you got your picture up. How many of you understand what I just said there? We can feel isolated in a crowded room. We hear the words that people are saying to us, but it's not going all the way down in here, is it? And we're just brushing off because they don't really understand. They can't possibly know. And you know what? They probably don't. But that's okay, because there are those who do. And one of the things Jennifer and I talked about before doing this program today was, building those relationships. How do you build a relationship with other people while you're a caregiver? And we're going to talk about that today. What is a caregiver? A caregiver is somebody who willingly puts themselves between a chronically impaired loved one and even worse disaster. That's what a caregiver is. And somebody said, well, what's the difference between a caregiver and a family caregiver? And I said, well, a paycheck for one. I ain't got paid. I tell Gracie, I will send her an invoice for back pay. Oh, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to send her, my wife, an invoice as if she would pay it. And, but we don't do this for money. So why are we doing this? When we do it, as you heard from that video, we do it out of love, out of a sense of commitment and duty. But what I hope that you will leave here today is that you don't do it out of a sense of obligation, because obligation is about that far away from resentment. How many of you all understand the destructive and corrosive properties of resentment? How many of you get that? My goal for my audience, for myself, for everybody that reads my book, everything that I do, is that one day when we as caregivers stand at a grave, and my goal is for me to be the one doing it, because I really don't want Gracie to live this life without me here. So I got to take care of myself in order for that to happen. But when I stand at that grave, I don't want to be standing there with clenched fist at doctors, at Gracie, at family and friends who didn't help the way I wanted to, at God, at myself. I don't want to be there with clenched fists. I'm a keyboard player. I'm a pianist. Do you know how hard it is to play a piano with clenched fist? Do you know how hard it is to push a wheelchair with clenched fist? Try it sometime. Not with them in it. Just go out to an empty field somewhere and just try to push it with clenched fist. You can't do it. We don't have to live this way. We don't have to live with resentment. We don't have to live with these. We do take care of somebody. We will have challenges. It will be hard. We will get tired. Look at me. I'm 25 years old. This is what caregiving does to you. Don't let this happen to somebody. We will live with brutal realities, but misery is a choice. And I am convinced that it doesn't matter what kind of tips I give you on how to care give, because I don't really spend a lot of time on caregiving tips on my show and my books, or anything else I do, because I can't tell you how to take care of your loved one any more than you can tell me how to take care of Gracie. And really, is that where the battle is? How many of you all, by show of hands, know how to give it an injection? Oh, come on, more than that. How many of you ever given a shot? Raise them up high. Okay. How many of you all need a refresher course on giving an injection? Imagine that. We don't. One and done. We got it. I know how to do it. You know how to do it. I know how to do it. So what's the problem? Once we learn something, we got it. We don't ever have to repeat it, do we? See, this is where I drill down on for caregivers. I don't deal with the one and done. I could teach you some of the tips I've learned and deal with insurance companies. Gracie's approaching $15 million. 7 different insurance companies over these 36. Well, she got hurt 39 years ago. I've never lost an appeal. Had a few of them that we stopped and we changed because the doctor said, well, it's taking too long. Let's go this direction. But once I got involved, I never lost one. I could teach somebody how to do that. But once you got it, you got it. How many of you struggle with dealing with doctors? It's not that complicated to deal with them. And I can teach you how to do that. Once you got it, you got it. So what's the problem? For us as caregivers, it's right in here of that relentless stuff that comes up every day, the matters of the heart, where we're having those long conversations with the ceiling fan, wondering, what in the heck are we going to do? How am I going to get through this? I want to be free of this. I'm done. I am worn out. I am mad. I'm despairing. All of those things. We all know those feelings. And if you don't know those feelings, keep at caregiving for a while. You'll learn them. This is one of those things that you just, I mean, I've had a lifetime to look at this mountain. And I still would deal with it today. Every day. It hasn't plateaued. It just stays nuts. The other day I had to take her to the emergency room. We had one of those things that happened where her blood, she has a coagulation issue because of all the transfusions she's had. And when they give her a sulfa drug for an infection, like Bactrim or whatever, it causes her coagulation factor to spike. So her blood gets real thin because she's on Coumadin. Well, the doctor forgot about it. Gracie forgot about it. I forgot about it. Here we are back in the emergency room. And it's kind of like playing whack-a-mole. Did anybody know what whack-a-mole is? I see a lot of heads not. So it's like playing whack-a-mole with her. It's a full-time job to keep track of all these things. But I had things to do. And so I'm sitting there in the emergency room with her, and I got the bedside tray that, they bring meals on and so forth. I've got it up. They're working on her, getting her squared away. I've got my laptop, and I had a deadline to do for an article. I'm going to keep working. I have things to do. And she knows that I'm right there. I'm right beside her, but I'm not going to sit there and just freak out. There's a point where you get past the freak out factor and you realize, this is just life. This is our life. It's not a bad life. It's just a hard life, but it's still a beautiful life that we live. And I kid her. I flirt with her outrageously. She won't leave me alone. She can't keep her hands off of me. No, now that's when she would jump in right now and say, oh, for heaven's sakes. But we have a life together and we built a life, but it didn't always work out that way. And I had to go through a lot of very painful things and to understand some of these concepts that I want to share with you all today in hopes that maybe you can avoid these things. I'm not a there kind of guy. I'm a, hey, don't go down there. That's a bad place. I've been down there. I've had ample time to make pretty much every kind of mistake you can make. But here's what I've learned from it. Those 3 I's that we talk about, we lose our independence. We become isolated. We lose our identity. Somebody comes up and asks you, how are you doing? How do you respond with that? Well, a lot of people will say this, and I bet you have too. I know I have. Well, we're doing okay. She had a bad night yesterday, but our situation is this. We're not speaking in first person singular. How can we ever have a relationship with someone else if we can't speak in our own voice? You know, and I remember going, I learned this at the piano one time. Actually, I learned this while playing the piano in church one time in front of an audience of about 800 people. That's a painful lesson to learn because Gracie is a no kidding singer. I mean, a no kidding singer. She's the real deal. She's sung on a lot of big stages and she's got this amazing voice. And I've accompanied her for a lifetime. Well, I was used to hearing her in my head. When I play stuff, I would hear her singing and I would play around her. So I would do what you call in the music business, we could just call it playing the changes, playing the chords. So, for example, can y'all hear that okay? Okay, so our pastor asked me, he said, would you play as people are coming into church just to kind of quiet it down so that it doesn't sound like a barn in here? I said, sure. And I've been playing since I was 5 years old. I was a music major, piano principal, composition arranging, and doing this since I was a kid. And I played some of these hymns that I knew my whole life. And that may not be where some of you all are playing hymns, but I like to play them. But I realized as I started playing them, I wasn't playing the melody. I was hearing Gracie's voice. So I was playing this. Those are high dollar chords. Those are great chords. Nobody knew what I was playing because I wasn't playing the melody. And I had to go back and teach myself to play the melody again, to play my melody. So I was playing. Now I'm playing something. I'm playing a melody. How about you? What's your melody? Do you speak in your own voice? Do you speak from first person singular? Do you say, I hurt, I'm tired, I'm struggling, I'm angry, I'm resentful, I'm brokenhearted, I need help? I don't care what comes after the word I. Whatever comes after that, now we're having an honest conversation. I can't tell you how many people have asked me about how Gracie's doing over the years. But I can count the ones that ask about me. How about you? So I had to learn to go against the tide because everybody wanted to know how Gracie was. Nobody knew what to say to me. And I had to find my voice and speak in my own voice. That's the first step towards building a relationship because now I'm speaking from here, from me. This is who I am. And this is where I think we as caregivers struggle so mightily. We lose ourselves in someone else's story. And as I say often, healthy caregivers make better caregivers. And part of being healthy is learning to reclaim, maybe discover, but certainly recover your identity in this. How many of you all feel like you've lost yourself in this? Anybody want to admit that? Sorry, I'm the only one that could see your faces, so you can nod. It's Monique, I see that. I see that hand. Yes, I see that hand. Sorry, I grew up in the South. My dad's a preacher. I don't know if it shows or not, but it's how many feel like that you've lost yourself, that people just almost ignore you. They don't see you. You know, we're an invisible army. Do you know how much the caregiving community does every year? We provide over $500 billion of unpaid labor every year. We're an invisible army. Now, here's another thing that I've added to my journey as a caregiver to help people understand what this is. What is a caregiver? Because when people think of caregiving, they think of taking care of the elderly. And I love the fact that, Jennifer, you had on this video of folks with cerebral palsy and others. I have a niece who's 34 years old, cerebral palsy, my brother's daughter. She is non-ambulatory, non-verbal. Sorry about that. I thought I had Bluetooth turned off and it turned back on and it's coming back in here. Somebody's calling about my extended car warranty. I take those calls, by the way. I talk to them all the time. My niece is 34. She's non-ambulatory, non-verbal. She's about like an 18-month-old. My brother's been a caregiver for her and he and his wife for 34 years. Children with autism, Down syndrome. They're not terminal. They're not in a nursing home, but they require care, mental illness. And the other part I add into is alcoholics and addicts. That's a chronic impairment. Some of you may be in a relationship with somebody who is an addict. Maybe they're medically dependent on opioids. Maybe they're abusing them. Maybe they're an alcoholic. Either way, you're still functioning as a caregiver. Wouldn't you say? It's a chronic impairment. Wherever you find a chronic impairment, you're going to find a caregiver. And wherever you find a caregiver, you're going to find somebody who is weary. And finding solid ground is hard to do. And so this is what I focus on for everything that I do, is to help. What is solid ground for us? What does that even look like? How do you have a relationship with somebody if you're so busy staying frenetic? And so I thought about this a lot over the years. I think it starts with this. Give me a nod here. And I see we got some questions. Jennifer, do you have any questions that we should ask right now? Or you tell me, just jump in. But give me a nod and tell me if I'm on the right track with you. How many of you all are very critical of yourself regarding your job performance as a caregiver? I see a lot of heads nodding. Okay, I get it. We're all that way. Every one of us. We're going to say, oh, man, we really screwed up. How many of you all balance that out with fairness to yourself by looking at your attendance record? Let's take a moment on that one. You are showing up. And you keep showing up. And you keep showing up. You have a flawless attendance record. Now, I don't care if you're swearing under your breath, you're looking bedraggled, you got bandages all over you. You keep showing up. What is that worth to you? How would you look at somebody who does what you do? And what would you say to that person? What would you say to somebody who does what you do? Would you beat them up? Would you berate them? Would you criticize them? Would you critique them? Or would you say, you're doing something extraordinary? People say, I don't even know what to say to a caregiver. I said, well, start off with this. I see you. And I'm looking at all your faces. And I see you. Marianne, I see you. Jill, I see you. Jennifer, I see you. Carolyn, Kathy, Judy, Dorinda, Patricia, I see all of you. JB, that's a great picture. I see all of you. And the next thing is I tell people and lead off with, I see you, and then I see the magnitude of what you carry. And I hurt with you. If somebody said that to you, and I am saying it to you, what does that do to your heart? For somebody to say to you, I see you. Marion, I see you. How does that make you feel? To be seen, to be recognized. You're never going to convince a caregiver that they're doing something awesome, but you can reinforce it. You can just keep trying, because we're going to, whatever you say to us as caregivers, we're always going to dismiss it with, well, you don't see the failures I make. But part of having a decent relationship with anyone is having an honest relationship built on trust. And that starts with you. You spend more time with you than you do with anybody else. So what do we do about that? How do we start affirming and building up and strengthening ourselves so that we can then have healthy relationships around? Part of that is having boundaries. Anybody here struggle with boundaries? No is a complete sentence. Y'all want to write that down? No is a complete sentence. And you don't have to engage or try to fix or address or correct every wrong or participate in things. You don't have to go to every fight that you get a ticket to. You don't have to do all those things. You could say no. But as I said when she introduced me about my martial arts, Hapkido is a self-defense art. And by the way, y'all have heard of Shogun? Well, I'm show enough. You could smile a little bit more, y'all. Okay, because this is funny stuff. This is comedy gold. This is what is called comedy gold. Write that down. Look at it, Teresa. Give me thumbs up there. Thank you for that, Teresa. In martial arts, when somebody throws a punch at you, okay, you have three choices. You can let them hit you and then try to hit them back harder. Okay. That's called the Trump doctrine. I'm going to hit you harder. That you can try to do that, but that's just going to let everybody get bloody. Or when they're swinging, you can try to overpower them and grab that fist. Or when they're throwing it, you can deflect. The fist goes over there, you're over here. Which one would you like to do? You want to take a punch? You want to try to capture a punch? Or do you want to deflect a punch? And I'm not just talking about from your loved one. I'm talking about from family and friends who criticize you. I know y'all have nobody in your life that criticizes you from family and friends, right? Not one of you. Every one of y'all have the full 100% unswerving support of everybody in your life, right? By the way, I'm having a snow day today because we have 9 inches of snow out here in Montana and it's 10 degrees outside. I wish I was in Maryland right now because the best crab cakes I've ever had in my life were right there. And oh, they were so good. But I like the snow. It's fun. Gracie likes the snow too. She likes to wake up to it. But I'm having it. So that's when you see my snow day caught. I'm having a snow day. There are so many critics involved in the caregiving journey. And it's not just critics who tell you what you do wrong. Don't you hate it when you get people that want to whiteboard on you and say, well, have you tried this? Have you tried this? Have you tried this? Have you tried this? And I'm like, I've been a caregiver for 36 years. Yeah, I've tried it. Okay. I've tried it. I don't need for you. And I don't have the time and the bandwidth to explain to you why. So you have to learn to work around some of these people, but I don't want to go toe to toe with them. I remember saying that to the doctors when we were in Denver for this big back surgery Gracie had earlier this year. She was there for 10 weeks. And a couple of the physical therapists and nurses were back and forth with her and they were trying to argue with her. And I looked at them. Now Gracie's double amputee, both legs. And I looked at them and I said, it has been my experience that you don't try to go toe to toe with somebody who doesn't have any. This will fail. And so I think they were all writing that down. So, because she's tough, man. She is a force of nature. But it's, for us as caregivers, do you have that wherewithal to just get into an argument with people? And they're wrong, but I don't have to prove you wrong. And I don't have to subject myself to your wrongness. You can learn to navigate around these people a little more smoothly. And it takes time and it takes practice And it takes a little bit of courage on our part as caregivers. First thing is you find your voice, and your voice is an important one. I tell caregivers, every one of us, we have what I call caregiver authority. And what that means is I don't necessarily know the science of all that goes on with my wife. But how many of you think I know my wife? We've been married 36 years. We have 2 children, about to have a 4th grandchild. We've lived a full, big life together. And I've been working out of my home for over 20 years. I'm with her all the time. I know my wife. So I may not know the science, but I know her. And I have caregiver authority to speak to various medical providers. I'm a walking history book of her life. I'm the only one that really knows her whole chart. How many of you all have that kind of relationship with your loved one? You know them. Monique, I see you nodding. You know them. Now, do you speak up on their behalf with authority, not with timidity, not with, oh, shucks, or, I'm not very smart or what? No, 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 no. You have caregiver authority, and it's okay for you to speak up. You know them. And I did a different thing this last surgery. This is the first big surgery she's had in some time. And I told all the doctors and all the nurses on the shift change, I said, it has been my experience. Look what I just did there. I spoke, number one, I spoke in my own voice. It has been my experience, not my opinion. My opinion is worthless. I don't even care about my opinion, but my experience is not worthless, and neither is yours. And I said, in my experience, I have found that when you do such and such, this is more successful. For example, chronic pain. Gracie lives with pain all the time. I mean, severe pain. It breaks my heart how much she has to endure. And managing her pain post-operatively is a trick. And it takes a lot of very smart people who humbly approach her. Now, how many of you know there are a lot of doctors out there who aren't humble? boy, oh, I'm just getting a whole bunch of amen. We're going to have church up in here. I've worked with so many doctors over the years, hundreds now. But I find that most of them want to do a pretty good job. And they when it comes to her, I do a lot of prep work. But I said to them, I titled this surgery. I actually came up with a title for this surgery. I called it Operation Aggressive Assurance. And I said to every nurse on every shift change, because I couldn't stay the night with her. I had to leave because of COVID restrictions, everything else. So I went and stayed at a hotel or a friend's of ours house in Denver. And I would say to every shift change, I said, look, you will get through the night with her, in my experience, if you constantly assure her, Gracie, we got you. We got you. I got you, Gracie. Don't you worry. We're going to have this here on time. We'll get this done. We got you. We got you. We got you. Operation Aggressive Assurance. And I was saying this to the acute care pain management doctor, and his whole team came into ICU with her. She's still on a ventilator at that point. We were laying out the strategy of what was going to happen. And I told him, I said, aggressive assurance. And this doctor, these are smart people. And they were leaving the ICU, and he turned around and he came back to me. And he looked at me and he put his hand on my arm. Wonderful man. Got the alphabet after his name. And he looked at me in the eyes. He said, I have found that caregivers need aggressive assurance as well. Brought a tear to my eye. Really moved me. Because I haven't had many doctors that have done that with me. But he did. And it let me know that this is something that we all crave. This is not unique to us as caregivers in this caregiving world. This is the human condition. We all want assurance. Assurance that we're going to be able to withstand this. We're going to get through this. We're going to be doing this. We're going to be okay. And we live with things that are not going to get better. We know that. But the goal is not for us to feel better, is it? Is that really the goal? Really? Because we could feel better right now. There's a lot of chemicals and alcohol and all kinds of things that make us feel better. But that's not really the goal, is it? The goal is for us to be better. That was a principle I learned, because once I'm learning that I don't have to feel good about this, I don't have to like what is happening to Gracie. I don't have to like what is happening to me, but I can be better in this. That's what I'm seeking. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, I don't know if you've heard of him or not, but he was a wonderful writer, Nobel Prize winner. He was imprisoned in a Russian gulag for 27 years. And as he was released, he looked back and he said, "Bless you, prison, for the change you made in my life. For there upon that rotting straw mattress, I learned that the goal here is not prosperity as we're told, but for the maturity of the human soul." That's a heck of a statement, isn't it? For us as caregivers, we live with things that are not going to necessarily have a fairy tale ending. Okay, so what do we do about it? We learn to live today, right here in this moment, healthier lives, healthier emotionally, physically, financially, spiritually, professionally, relationship-wise, healthy, not happy. Happiness will hit us at times, and that's okay. It's okay for us to be happy, but that can't be the goal. But healthiness can be. It is a healthy thing right now for all of us to be together. We're pushing against that isolation right now. Jennifer's made this possible, that we can push against all this isolation and come into a community where we all understand each other. Is anybody, I got to ask you, even though I speak Southern, is anybody struggling to understand what I'm saying as a caregiver? If you are, this is your time. So is it fair to say that I speak fluent caregiver? Do you feel understood? Do you feel connected? Well, how's that for a good step in the right direction? Because now you are. And you may have come into this today feeling so beaten down, so discouraged, so isolated. But you're not going to leave here that way, because there are people you realize now, thanks to technology, thanks to Jennifer's hard work, thanks to this wonderful organization, that recognize how important it is for you to feel connected. That's not going to take away your caregiving circumstances anymore. You're going to take away mine. I'm going to be a caregiver the rest of the day. When Jennifer and I talked earlier this morning, I was making dinner for tonight, which I'm very good at, by the way. I'm a very good cook. I could bring home the bacon fried up in the pan and never let up forget I'm a man. That's the truth right there. You can write that down. I'm sorry. I told you, Jennifer, I don't stand on ceremony. But I'm constantly in motion as a caregiver. But I'm also constantly thinking, how do I push back against this isolation? I'm learning to speak in my own voice. I'm connecting with you all today. We're never going to forget this connection we have here today. Never. We're not going to forget this moment. And that independence, that those three I's, remember that independence where you can do the things that you need to do physically, but also professionally. This is something that has really troubled me about caregivers. We feel like we're trapped. I did for a long time. And I don't want to feel that way. I'm not trapped. I have certain things that tether me, that I can't come and go as I please on some things. But I've learned to be very much, I think freedom starts in here. Remember when Solzhenitsyn was in prison for 27 years. Mandela was in prison for 29 years. Where is freedom? And I'm asking you, where is freedom? Don't nod, point. Where's freedom? It's right here. It's right here. You can have, and I'll give you an example. I knew a couple back in Nashville, fabulously wealthy. I mean, very well. They got a lot of money. And he had some kind of neurological event. And his wife was killing herself to take care of him, literally doing this. And she was struggling because he had sundowners too. I mean, so at the end of the day, man, he just became so ugly to her, so ugly. And it was just destroying her heart. And I pulled her aside and I said, you've got the money. Get someone in here to help you. Take this load off of you. She wasn't doing it. She needed permission to do that. I mean, these people had money. And she wouldn't do it because of obligation, because of guilt. I call it the fog of caregivers: fear, obligation, and guilt. And that paralyzes so many people. So when you are driving in fog, I know y'all get a lot of fog over there in Maryland. Now, we got a lot of people here, not just from Maryland. I think we have them all over the country, but let's just talk to you folks in Maryland for a minute. You guys get a fog over there. You're driving in a fog. You come out on a fog bank. What do you do? What's the first thing you do? By the way, Jennifer, do we have anything? Do I need to stop and answer some things?
Nope. Just
Okay.
some comments here and there.
So what do we do when we see a fog? Well, you slow down. All right. Do you turn on your high beams or your low beams? Turn on. Look at Teresa. She knows. She turned on the low beams. Why is that? Because you turn on the high beams and it's going to glare back at you and you won't be able to see. Now, when we get into a fog as caregivers where we really don't know what to do, what do? Well, we slow down. Let's just slow down. And then let's turn on the low beams. And what does that mean? That means quit trying to look too far into the future. We're going to deal with today, right here, right now. I remember one time I was Gracie had an infection, a post-op infection following a back surgery back in 2002. And the doctor came back up and said, she's got this. Here's the protocol we're going to have to do. She's going to have to be here for 3 months. He said, we know what to do with it, but she's going to have to be flat on her back. She can't raise up more than 15 degrees. We're going to have to go in every 3 days and irrigate this out and clean this out. And I had 2 children at home, and I said, I can't do this for 3 months. He put his hand on my shoulder and he said, you're not going to do it for 3 months. You're going to do it for 24 hours. How about that? So when I did this last 3-month stretch with Gracie, I didn't say I can't do it for 3 months because I did it for 24 hours. I just dealt with today. I've told Gracie, she was asking me, she was getting a little bit anxious about some things. She said, well, what are we going to do about this? What are we going to do about this? I said, we're not there yet. We're not there. We're not there yet. We're going to deal with here, right now. So that's part of how we function as caregivers. How can you have meaningful relationships with yourself, with your loved one, with anybody else, with doctors, whatever, if you're just flying all, oh my God, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Well, I don't know what we're going to do. We're not there yet. So we're going to be here. And this is how we live. And this is absolutely contrary to our society. Everything that bombards you from our culture says, you got to have a 5-year plan. You got to do this, this, and this. How do you have a 5-year plan living with what I live with? I would love to hear that suggestion. I'm doing good to have a 5-hour plan sometimes. When Jennifer booked me to come and speak this thing, I always book these things wondering, what am I going to be doing that day? Because I have no idea. Thank goodness we have technology so that I can do this on the fly, because there was a very good chance I would have been doing this from down at the hospital. But this is a group that would understand that. But I didn't have to worry about it. I just, I'm going to live today. Our culture says no. Our culture says you need to be out of pain. You need to feel good. And you need to be able to plan. I'll give you an example on this. There was a great episode. It was in his monologue, what Jerry Seinfeld did. There's no more regular strength pain reliever. It's all maximum strength. Whatever will kill the human body, back it off a little bit. That's what I want. The goal is not, again, for us to feel good. The goal is for us to be better. And part of being better is to settle ourselves down, and we're going to deal with right here, and we're going to deal with right now. We're going to make the best decisions. You see, I've got this theory. You tell me if I'm right. Tell me if I'm in the right ballpark. But I got this theory that we as caregivers make better decisions with relationships, with money, with our job, with everything, if our hearts are settled. I'm going to ask you a hard question. Is your heart settled today? Do you just feel beat up? Or is your heart settled? And if not, why not? That's the goal for us as caregivers, because this is our journey. Every day we're going to be dealing with these realities. And we don't have to try to, as we say in South Carolina where I grew up, we don't have to try to polish a cow pie. I'll give y'all a minute. You don't have to do that. You don't have to turn this into something, I get some people that are just, oh, I just love it. This is my life. I just love. You ain't done it long enough. Okay. I'm sorry. You ain't done it long enough, because there are going to be days when you just beating your head against the wall. You don't have to make this into anything other than what it is. You're a caregiver, and you're doing something out of your soul to care for a human being who is in distress, who may be cussing you out while you're changing their adult diapers. Some of y'all know what that's like. Some of you have been grabbed. Some of you have been hit. And I bet you, if any of you have done this for any length of time, some of you have had your heart just stomped on. So how do you keep going? How do you keep moving? How do you keep doing this? Well, it starts from, again, and I got to watch my time here. How am I doing on time, Jennifer? It starts from learning to speak in your own voice, having your own independence. Part of that is boundaries. Navigating around some of these things that you don't have to get yourself embroiled in. You ever heard the phrase, not my circus, not my monkeys? Write it down. Put it on your dresser, wherever you got to put it. That's not mine. A reporter once asked me, what's the hardest thing you faced as a caregiver? And they knew enough of my background and my biography with it. And I said, hands down, the hardest thing I've ever faced as a caregiver, hands down, is knowing what is mine and what is not mine. Gracie has a savior. I ain't that savior. And I'm not here to fix her. I can't do this. I can't undo this. But I didn't do this to her. She had a wreck before I ever met her. I've done my share of things. I've caused her to cry many times. I've been a real, I'm using very appropriate language, Jennifer. You'd be very happy. But I've had my share of mistakes, painful ones. But I didn't do this to her. And I can't undo it. So what's my role? To care for her, to be with her, aggressive assurance, and live today peacefully, knowing that I'm doing the best that I can. And when there's an opportunity to do something better, I'll make some changes. And then I make amends where I have to. I just wrote an article about this, and I talked about this on my program. Let me be brutally honest. That's one of the phrases people use when they want to be brutal more than honest. Let me be brutally honest. When anybody says that, they're putting your chin right there, and then they're hauling back, and they're getting ready to pop you one. But how many of us are brutally honest with ourselves? We don't need to be brutal. We can be honest. And I don't need to give permission. When somebody says, let me be brutally honest, they're not looking for consent. They're not asking my permission to do it. They're just saying, I want to do it. But are you doing that to you? Because if we're going to be honest with ourselves, let's look at the extraordinary things we're doing every day. There is no caregiver university. This is all on the job training. If there was, I'd be the guy to start it. And I ain't starting it. We're just showing up every day out of our own lack sometimes and caring for somebody that we love. I went to music school. I'm a really good pianist. They didn't teach me this stuff in music school. They didn't teach me how to do all these things. And I'm doing the best that I can. And I keep a sense of humor while I do it, which is very important, by the way. And if you feel low on your sense of humor, then reach out to me. I'll help. You can have some of mine, because I'm sure Gracie would like to give away some of my sense of humor. They called me into the surgery there, the pre-op area. And the surgeon said, I want you to go through the emergency room because it'll be early before they open the hospital. And so I couldn't go that way. It's 19 degrees outside that day in Denver. This is just this year. And so I go to the emergency room and the guard there says, we can't let you in. And I said, well, the surgeon told me to come here. She's in pre-op. And she said, well, you need to go to the front. And I said, the front is closed. They don't open till 8. They called me. They want now. She said, well, you need to go to the front. I said, where did I lose you? And she said, I said, the surgeon is called. And finally I'd had enough. And I looked at her just deadpan. And I looked at her and I said, ma'am, I am board certified in cranial proctology. And they called me, they need me in pre-op right now. And she looked at me and she let me in. It never occurred to her to ask what cranial proctology is. But I've noticed in my life, there are a lot of people, particularly big bureaucracies, that have that type of interface, if you will. I'm saying that delicately. Y'all follow me right there, right? Jennifer, I see you. So I know y'all are following me on that. So, you keep a sense of humor. And sometimes you're the only one laughing, but that's okay. That's all right. Because you're going to find that once you start doing these things, you're going to engage with other people and even your loved one from a much more settled place. Not from a place of straining. Oh my God, I got to fix this. I got to. See, that obligation, fear, obligation, and guilt, you're in that obligation place when you're saying, I gotta, I need to, I have to, I should have. We should have all over ourselves. Oh, that's funny. I don't care who you are. We don't put that on us. We're stewards. We're not obligated. We're stewards. I don't own this. It's way beyond my pay grade to fix it. I'm here to just be and to give assurance that I will continue to be. And we're going to get through this. Gracie doesn't need me to be super caregiver. She doesn't need me to be the guy that fixes all of her problems. She just needs me to sit with her, be with her, keep a sense of humor, and just live life with her in the midst of her heartache. And these are things that I've learned about being a caregiver. The things that, we're going to deal with in 2 weeks, we'll deal with them in 2 weeks. We'll be ready. But I got a better shot of dealing with that and keeping calm if I am calmer, if I am in a calmer place, a healthier place. So that's my time with it, I think. And are we okay on that, Jennifer?
Yeah, Peter, that's great.
Do you have any questions?
So I know that we've heard some themes here, like practicing self-love and self-kindness and how we need to be more gentle on ourselves, that we have to work on establishing boundaries, finding our community so we're not isolated, and kind of taking an approach of just 24 hours at a time. Are there any other words of wisdom or takeaways that you can bestow upon us?
Learn to speak in the first person singular. And by the way, if somebody asks you how you're doing, it's okay to have stock answers. Okay. Because a lot of times caregivers are so needy and we're desperate for connection that we'll make people drink from the fire hose. I don't have to tell everybody Gracie's chart if they ask her how she's doing. And I'm not going to. I have circles of people that I trust with that information. And it's exhausting to have to relay all that all the time. There's no way they're really going to understand. And so I keep people at different levels, and I have an intimate group that I can share things with and just let my hair down with, so to speak. And I have others that ask in passing, and I will say things like, she's not where she'd like to be, but she's better than she was. That's enough information for them. We have a saying in our home that everybody knows she's an amputee, but not everybody sees the stump. So I would suggest to you that you guard your heart. People may know you're a caregiver, but that doesn't mean they need to see all the inner workings. Guard your heart. You will find those relationships as you learn to cultivate these principles. You'll find them where you can share your heart. That's one of the reasons I started a Facebook group for caregivers. I monitor the group. I'm the guy. And if it goes off the rails, somebody tries to take it off the rails, I get rid of them. It's just a place you share your heart where people speak fluent caregiver. There are people out there that will do that, but it's not going to happen until you start speaking from your heart while guarding it. It's so important that you do that. I do not share all of Gracie's journey. I mean, I'm a public person. I'm on the radio and all these kinds of things. I don't share all of her posts. The only thing I share is what she gives me permission to share. But they don't need to know that. Nor do people need to know your loved one's situation, nor do they need to necessarily know all that's going on with you. There are trustworthy people that will be in your life. Remember that doctor that came over there and just touched my arm? Caregivers need assurance too, aggressive assurance. There are people that are going to come into your life like that, maybe even in this very room here. So guard your heart. It's really important you do that. And it's okay to have stock answers and practice just speaking slower with people, not necessarily slower I speak fast. For a Southerner, I speak real fast, but don't be so quick to just dump everything out on the table. Okay. I know you're lonely. I know it. I understand that loneliness. But we still have to be measured on how we communicate to people, because sadly, a lot of people can't be trusted with your heart. It's already tender. Don't allow it to get mangled. Okay. That's the best one I got on that, Jennifer.
Thanks, Peter. I want to give anybody else the opportunity to unmute themselves and ask a question, or maybe just share something that they feel comfortable doing. So I know that there's been some messages in the chat, so thank you for that.
Who wants to say something? Listen, I'm here for y'all.
Hey,
Okay.
Peter.
I'm at home right now in my office. Dinner's already made for tonight. So we can just hang out here. Okay. Who's talking right there? Is that Yudi?
Hi. Yes. Hi.
Hey, Yudi.
Wow. You said something that literally got me. I'm here like crying. So, there was someone that said something. You just said it, and that's why it hit me. That said, learn to forgive people, because something along the lines, learn to forgive people because they done, especially your parents, the best they could with what they knew and what they had. And I'm a caregiver for my mom. And when that person shared that with me about 2 years ago, it was like a big weight was lifted off my shoulders. And you just said that today as a caregiver, and that brought me to tears immediately, because it is that constant weight. And sometimes we go through those phases of what else can I do? And I feel from talks that I've seen about caregivers and long-term care, this has been so impactful, because my mom is a double lung transplant survivor, and she still uses oxygen at home. And now the biggest challenge is emotional. And for the past 2 days, she just hasn't been herself, and I have to carry that weight. And when you said that, it just totally hit me. And I'm like, I know that I'm doing the best I can, providing financially, but also physically, where at times it's like that social life is non-existent or limited, because it is that relying on me for that support. So thank you for sharing that and everything else that you shared.
Well, you're quite welcome. And you touched on something, Yudi, I'd like to also add: forgiveness. This topic of forgiveness. This word is often misconstrued, that we are somehow that it's okay. Okay, I forgive. It's okay. No, it's not okay. Forgiveness doesn't mean that it didn't matter, and it doesn't mean that it didn't hurt. What it means is you're going to take your hands off of somebody else's throat. That's the difference with forgiveness. There are consequences that people have to deal with because of their behavior. And I hate it for them. I'm sorry. But I am not going to dismiss this simply because I want to say, well, I'm just going to forgive and forget. No, I forgive. I'm not going to hold this grudge, but I can keep boundaries and I can keep safe distance from this. And I don't have to engage with you. I look at these people that have heinous crimes against them. And when the family forgives, they're releasing that. And I heard a pastor say this one time, and I thought he was really, I corrected him. He didn't appreciate it, but I did correct him. He said, you can't have healing without repentance. And I said, that's not true. There are a lot of unrepentant people in jail right now, but the family can have healing by releasing it and forgiving and saying, you know what? I'm taking my hands off their throat. That God, they're going to have to deal with God about that. I'm going to go live my life, and I'm not going to be tethered or chained to these people because of my own resentment. And sometimes this is the place we have to be as caregivers, that there are going to be people who are going to say things and do things and hurt you terribly. Maybe it's your loved one and they treat you poorly, or they take you for granted. They presume upon you. You don't have to live in that kind of bondage, but forgiveness, make no mistake, doesn't mean it doesn't matter. It does matter. The wound is real, but it just means that you're going to take your hands off their throat. So can you hang on to that one too? When you get in situations where somebody said, well, you just need to forgive them. First off, I'm not real comfortable with people telling me what I need to do. Okay. And I hope you're not either. Those words should and need, I've tried to excise from my vocabulary, because I can't tell Gracie what she needs to do. She can't really tell me what I need to do. Here's something I learned that may be helpful. Here's what my experience has taught me, but that's it. Again, my opinion is irrelevant. My experience is not. Okay. Does that help?
Thank you. Yes.
Any other questions, comments? Patty, you've been nodding the whole time. What you got on your mind?
You just speaking to my experience today, Peter, and I really appreciate it. It touches me deeply to hear your perspective and some really good reminders in there.
Thank you very much. When you're the crash test dummy of caregivers, or sometimes maybe the Wile E. Coyote of caregivers, I have crashed into this mountain so many times. And after a while, you do pick up a few things. But the thing I love being able to do is just speak fluent caregiver with fellow caregivers, that we all understand each other. Jill, how about you? Jill Berry,
Yeah, so I'm
there you go.
so I'm not a full-time caregiver or even really a part-time caregiver. I did look after one of my parents during an ICU stay. I am grants manager, social media manager for a nonprofit that has a large staff of direct support professionals, caregivers, and that's why I'm here. I wanted to get that perspective, but I'm also kind of realizing that, though my caregiving was about 6 weeks, it was brief, but it was intense. And I fully agree with all that you're saying. I remember one thing that we did, my mother is completely hard of hearing, and with all the noises in the ICU, her hearing aids wouldn't pick up voices. So we got a stack of legal pads from Costco and Sharpie pens, and she had a BiPAP. So we were writing down the questions from the doctors because she couldn't hear. And then we'd turn the page to her, and then she'd read the question, and then she'd write back her answer. And I was just kind of almost like interpreting for her or something. And what I found is that I had to tell family members that they had to listen to what she was writing down on the paper. Those were her questions. She was incapacitated, but she was fully aware. And it was hard to get my father to just not add in his stuff. And sometimes my mother would then get very upset because her questions were being ignored. Anyway, that was just kind
No,
of how
I've been there with Gracie, and now Gracie doesn't need me to carry her water in that regards. I mean, Gracie will tell you when to get off and how fast to do it. She really is I tell her she's tougher than train smoke. But there are times when I jump in too quickly, and she needs to be able to articulate to her own doctor what's going on, and I speak faster and sometimes just more clearly. I just get it right on. I mean, that's what I do for a living, and I need to learn to bite my tongue and like the taste of blood. And sometimes we as caregivers will have to do the same thing. Just we gotta let them say it how they want to say it, and we don't have to filter it or somehow try to edit it. It is what it is. Lucy, what do you got on your mind?
Oh, I'm unmuted. Let's see. I'm going through a number of potential questions for you and need to pick a good one. Let me see here.
If a train left New York traveling at 60 miles an hour. No, there's no math on this today.
I can't. I'm not a number person. Several things. What you were just talking about so poignantly about letting go of others' throats, I think, and also the I feel as if my brain is always scrambled, and 17 thoughts are coming in at once, if that makes sense, before we get anywhere near as good at this as you are, things like that. But let's see, I'm actually caring for my dad right now. I'm in Maryland and I live in North Carolina. Let's see, I've been up here for 3 months. My mother passed away on August 9th. And so I'm still not home yet. Don't know when I will be. And I know with my mother's death, my dad and I are both dealing with this here. I feel as if he's depressed and things. So I'm wondering, just specific to what you were just discussing about someone being awful to you, mean to you, not forgiving, super demanding. I feel as if some of his responding to me in inappropriate ways, one, is really who this guy is in a number of ways. He's a lot, for lack of better words. But I'm wondering, I try to be as understanding as I can. This man's 91 years old. He's going through, his own decline. I don't know how much of his forgetfulness and things are dementia or not. I cannot get his primary care doctor to give me an answer there. I'm kind of treading a fine line. How much do I kind of let him, and I don't want to quote, let him walk on me, but I know that he's highly irritable, probably a level of low level dementia, probably, some depression and things like this. I have to guard myself, but I let things go because an argument will just take up so much time.
All right,
it's exhausting.
Let me address that real quick, if you don't mind.
Let me stop. If
you don't mind, because it's just in the interest of time with the group. All right, I'm going to be kind of graphic. If you'll go ahead and mute that for just a second so we won't hear a lot of background noise, but I'm going to be kind of graphic for a moment, but we're all caregivers, so okay? How many of you all taking care of a patient that has a problem with urination? None of you? None of you have taken, besides Lucy and Queen Bee, y'all the only two people in this room that have had okay. Do you let them pee all over you? You recognize that they're going to have a problem with this, and you put safeguards in place to be able to deal with it. Okay. Whether it's lining the bed or whatever, pointing them, whatever you got to do. But the point is you don't just go in every day. Okay, let's just pee on me again today. You put safeguards in place. All right. It's the same thing with their verbal behavior. Okay. It's the same thing with their physical behavior. All the same principles. What kind of safeguards can you put in place? One of them is, that they got a problem. That's the first thing. You got a problem. This guy's got a problem. Lucy, your father has a problem. He's got bitterness that's being amplified by his decline. You know that. Sometimes he's doing it to you. Sometimes he's not doing it. He's not doing it to you. He's just doing it. And if you weren't there, he'd be doing it to somebody else. It's not you personally that necessarily is the object of his dysfunction. But you know, because your proximity, you're going to get it. You know, if somebody's having a problem urinating and they're a mile away, I don't have to worry about that too much. But if I'm up close and personal, I do. So I got to make some preparation for it. That's pretty graphic, and I don't mean to be crass or anything like that, but I figured this group would understand that. It's the same thing with your emotional stuff. He's got a problem. His problem is he's going to treat people in proximity to him poorly. You know that. If it's not you, it'll be somebody else. While you don't get a free pass to be an ass, can I say that, Jennifer? You don't get a free pass to be an ass. You recognize that some people are. I work with horses out here. How many times are you going to walk behind a horse after you've been kicked by one? So you have to work around it. And you have to make some kind of buffers so that you protect your heart, Lucy. Your heart needs to be protected while you do all these things. So how do you do that? Well, number one is you just detach from his behavior, recognizing that he doesn't have the right, the wherewithal, or the understanding or the authority to in any way impugn your heart. I don't care if he's your dad or not. His sickness doesn't have the same right either. So once you shore up that, again, that's that identity, boundaries. Once you shore that up, you can go into these situations with a little more confidence and you deflect it. You're not there to fix him from throwing punches. He's going to throw punches. You're there to learn how to deflect it and put
Right.
it over there and not take this personally. Okay? Consider the source.
Yeah. Yeah.
Consider the
I
source.
just got to work on those methods, I believe.
And it takes time and you're going to fail at it. And it's okay. If you're how many of you all like baseball? All right, Dorinda loves. If you are a professional baseball player and you put the bat on the ball 3 out of 10 times, they're going to put you in the Hall of Fame. All right. You're not going to get this right every time, but you're going to make progress at it. Don't shoot for perfection. Michael J. Fox, a great quote by Michael J. Fox said, perfection is God's business. Excellence is mine. That's a good quote to live by, isn't it? All right. Any other questions or comments? I want to be sensitive to everybody's time, but I want to be here. Bonnie. Hey, Bonnie. I know Bonnie. Unmute yourself, Bonnie. You're still muted. You can hear me, but I can't hear you.
She's asking how to unmute herself.
Well, there's a little microphone in the bottom of your screen,
think.
usually on the left. Either that or you're waving me into third base. I have no idea. Well, we can't hear you, Bonnie. I'm sorry about that.
So, Peter, I just would like to say thank you. I had the opportunity to hear you back in 2016 on a similar type of event. And when you spoke about fog, it played such a major influence because I had never heard it in that way, the fear, obligation, and guilt. And sometimes the smallest thing sticks with you. And I just have had the honor of allowing my father to transition in peace. And believe me, we had a very tumultuous relationship over my lifetime and his lifetime, both hard-headed people. But I was there not out of obligation, not out of fear, not out of guilt. I was truly there so that he could have the most dignified transition for his spirit. And so I just know that things that you have said today will carry through with the people that have been participating in this event, and will touch them in ways that they just don't even begin to know until they're in that moment, like you said, because it is about the present. So thank you so much.
You're quite welcome, Dorinda. Thank you. Monique, you've been nodding your head this whole time. What do you got on your heart before we close up? I'll let you go last. How about that?
Oh, my. I want to thank you so much. I had no idea how much I really needed this. And the way things were going, I thought I was going to miss it. And I'm grateful that God worked it out for me to actually be off so that I could hear this presentation. I've raised my family. Now I'm raising or helping to raise my grandchildren. My mother has now come to live with me, but she's perfectly healthy. It's my stepfather now that I have acquired his situation where I'm seeing the signs of dementia coming. And I have felt like I've been placed into this caregiver role for him, which I wasn't prepared for. And that is where all of what you talked about today was where I was feeling. And I'm trying not to cry because it's still so raw for me. But I thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You are
I'm going to get your book. And I really wish I had known about it.
I'm going to let you in on a secret. I'm still a caregiver, and I get stronger every time I talk about these things and talk about them with my fellow caregivers. And this is how we do it. We build each other up. I'm going to need you to repeat back everything I said today to me next week. Okay. I'm going to need you to do it back to me. I need you to go get the transcript from Jennifer after this thing is over. And then I want you to read it back to me because I have caregiver amnesia. Okay. I have caregiver amnesia, and I have to be reminded of these things. Like I said at the beginning, I don't have to be reminded on how to give a shot. I don't have to be reminded on how to deal with the doctor or pay for prescriptions or whatever. But these things I have to be reminded, reinforced. And as that doctor said to me, caregivers need aggressive assurance too.
Exactly.
And right now, every one of us need aggressive assurance. And that's what we do for one another so that we can get back into the journey that we have and be able to stand a little calmer, a little healthier, and dare I say it, a little more joyful.
Right. And I appreciate the joy and humor. Thank you so much.
You are quite welcome. Jennifer, anything else that you have? Oh, Patricia. Patricia's got one more. Okay.
Peter.
Okay, Patricia.
Hi, Peter. How are you?
I'm just precious. How are you doing?
I'm good, Peter. Jennifer, I thank you for getting me on today. I'm not too savvy, Peter, when it comes to technology, but Jennifer sort of looks out for me. I'm so happy to be here. I have a group of caregivers, and all I could think of as you were speaking this afternoon, I wish they all could be on here today because they often feel forgotten. And I have like 110 caregivers who I send something special to every single morning.
Well, now Jennifer's going to have this available to give to them, right, Jennifer? They'll be able to see this whole thing.
Okay, because many of them could not get on because they're taking care of somebody, and it's just always something. And so, Peter, you were just wonderful this morning, and I just can't say enough about what I'm hearing. And those who can't get on in the future, I've taken notes about things that you shared today, and so thank you so much.
Well, you're
and
quite
I'm here
welcome.
because I want to share with them. The Lord has put me in this role for a reason.
Indeed.
And I'm going to do my best as long as I can.
You all follow back with Jennifer and all the resources she has, and let her push those out to you guys. She'll have all that available to you. Okay.
Okay.
And she'll make it all available. That's what she does. That's her mission, is to do that. So thank you for that.
And thank you.
Anything else?
Peter, can I just add, this is JB. I just want to add that your demonstration about am I playing my melody was so impactful. I just want to thank you for that. I don't think I'll ever forget that when you were talking about us losing ourselves in someone else's life. The caretaker over 40 years for my younger sister who's living with a serious mental illness. And it was confirmation for me because just recently, maybe a few months ago, it just dawned on me that she's the central character in my play. So when you said that, I was like, wow. So something to work on, but thank you so much. Extraordinary presentation. Thank you.
Well, you're quite welcome, JB. And you know what? You're the central story in what's going on with you. And yes, you have a role to play with your sister. And yes, it is what it is. But your life, your identity, your voice, your thought. This is one of the things I tell. I lead a caregiver support group out here every Thursday. And I ask them, what do you enjoy doing? What do you like doing? And, you know, various ones like, I got one man who, in fact, I'm going to be playing for his funeral, his wife's funeral tomorrow. She passed away. She had Alzheimer's, and he's a retired dentist, and he likes to carve these little birds. And he gives them out to people, but they're really exquisite. He does it out of wood that he gets out here from the forest and scrap wood and so forth. And he carves these little tiny birds. They're very exquisite. And it, from that scripture says, consider the birds of the air. You know, how your father watches over them. Are you not worth more than them? But he gives these out. He loves to do it. I've got another lady that likes to find driftwood along the lake here, and she'll make little exquisite things of art. Another guy likes to work on cars. Another guy likes to write cowboy poetry. We're out in Montana, so there are a lot of cowboys out here. And so I ask you, what do you like to do? What do you enjoy doing? And you may have to do that by yourself, and you may have no one around you to share it with initially. But one of the things I like to do is I like to play the piano. And sometimes that's the only way I can pour out what's in my heart. Hans Christian Andersen used to say, where words fail, music speaks. And I like to do that. But I also like to get out on a snowmobile, and I like to ride horses and things such as that. I don't get days off, but I get hours off that I can go ride a horse and things like that. So JB, as you discover your identity and who you are, and reclaim yourself, you know, find those little, and it may be something very private and quiet that you like to do, and do it and enjoy it. And don't ever feel guilty for doing things that express your soul. Okay. Jennifer, I think we about hit it.
That's it. Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much, Peter, for your time, for your wisdom, for your experience, your shared experience with us. And thank you all attendees for giving of your time. I know it was a little long, but it seems like everybody got something out of it. So
well,
I'm
Bonnie,
glad.
you can reach out to me later. Bonnie's actually known Gracie longer than I have.
Oh, wow.
And and everything I said about Gracie is true, isn't it, Bonnie?
She was your fact checker today, Peter.
She is my fact checker, and she knows Gracie is a force of nature. So Jennifer, I can't thank you enough for allowing me the privilege of just spending time with you guys. I did go a little bit long, but I figured you guys would just leave. I've cleaned out many rooms where I was the only one left there. So
Spoken like a true pastor, right? Well, thank you so much. We're going to get this recording on the Department of Disabilities YouTube channel, as well as the Department of Human Services social media handles. So stay tuned, or feel free to contact me, jennifer.eastman@maryland.gov. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day, and happy National Family Caregiver Month. Take care.
All right. I'll leave you with this one. If you've ever hooked up your dog to your wife's wheelchair just to see if it would work, you might be a caregiver. And I have footage. I've done it. See y'all.
Take care.